it's funny, like Ben, who, our longtime bass player, like there was one time where he was making jokes about how bad certain Van Halen sound recordings sounded.
Yeah.
And I always was kind of like in my mind, like, I was like, what are you talking about? Those recordings sound amazing. He was like, no, they don't. They sound like shit. And then I went back and like was like listening to him, and I was like, actually, they sound kind of shitty. Like some of them sound really shitty, but it doesn't fucking matter.
An all-new episode of The Jeremy White Show.
Available wherever you stream.
I mean, this episode today is going to be so much fun. Mike from Incubus. I caught up with him a couple of weeks ago. They just kicked off their big tour on the road right now. They kicked off August 23rd in Michigan, Detroit. They performed in Rosemont, Illinois over the weekend. This week they're playing Philly, New York, Boston, Tampa, Irving, Texas, Austin, down to Denver, San Francisco. And they're doing Morning View in its entirety, which is one of the greatest records of all time. Celebrating that, plus all the hits too. Make sure you go and check them out live. It's going to be a great show. Man, just honestly, talking to Mike was so much fun. We talked about recording Morning View, bringing us back to when they were originally in the studio, getting all that stuff down on tape. And I was actually shocked to discover that he's not much of a gearhead. If you listen to some of those guitar tones that he got on that record, really cool stuff. Doesn't really care about how he got any of them. I was kind of thrown off by that. He also told some incredible stories about working with Avicii, specifically on the song Wake Me Up, which was one of the biggest songs of all time. And he told this phenomenal story about the SNL performance from Avicii that just never was. All of that and more, check it out right now. Chatting with Mike from Incubus here on The Jeremy White Show. Check it out.
Be, here in 2024. And just with the knowledge that, we wrote all this music that people actually care about, that's crazy. It seems like it's like given, we've been around for a long time and that we would get used to that, but nothing's given in this world.
Well, that's it. I mean, especially in songwriting, right? I mean, like you never know when something's just going to click with somebody, and you guys keep doing it.
Well, it's so hard to do anything in this world. There's so much happening all the time, and the information highway is such a raging torrent of information. It's hard to capture anybody's attention span for more than like a second. So the fact that we can show up literally anywhere in the world and play music in front of tens of thousands of people is like, I don't know how that happens, but it did.
Yeah. Does it affect you in the songwriting process? I mean, like taking that into consideration, it's like, damn, like we got to catch these people within the first 3 seconds, or they're going to skip us on Spotify, or they're going to switch the station. Like,
we can't really think about it like that. I think if I did think about it like that, like you'd probably never write anything. You know what I mean? It's right. Like it would just seem too hard. I think that the process that we've followed for writing songs in the past really never took any of that into account at all, and I think we continue just to be that way.
Yeah, you kind of you just take it as you go, right? I mean, art just sort of happens if you allow it to happen. You can't have rules in place.
Yeah, we just don't pay attention to that. We never really have.
So talk a little bit about Morning View. Of course, I mean, like it's kind of cool the fact that you guys are going to be going out and playing a record in its entirety. Yeah. How do you think the fans are going to react to that?
Well, we kind of did a little experiment where we did it at the Hollywood Bowl last year in October. We weren't originally planning to do that, but there was just this sort of growing consensus that like it would be awesome if we did. Yeah. And at first I was kind of like, oh no, I don't want to do that. That's cheesy. But then I started like really internalizing it, really thinking about like, wait, what's cheesy about me and my band playing songs that we wrote? Yeah. All in a row. And actually it's really special. And what makes it really special is that people don't consume music like that anymore for the most part, at least not the younger people. They kind of skip around a lot. But back in my generation, we listened to albums from front to back, and the transitions from one song to another, like that was actually like a real part of the experience. Like hearing, the end of one song, like, and then starting at the next and expecting that's gone, like from live performances, you don't get that. So to be able to actually like inject that piece of it into a live performance, especially for people from our generation who are now bringing their kids, like That's awesome. And I thought that would, be something really interesting. And after we did it at the Hollywood Bowl, a lot of people were talking about that
Yeah.
aspect of it. So, it's like it's so hard to connect. It's so hard to do anything that people care about in this world. And the fact that, we wrote all this music and here we are over 20 years later and people really care, like it's such an honor, such a privilege, and it's so humbling. So, we really appreciate that and really excited to go out and play these shows.
And it's funny you talk about that because it's like, for me, I remember a couple of years ago when these, let's perform a record in its entirety conversations started coming up. And I remember talking to Phil Collins from Def Leppard, and I'm a huge Def Leppard fan. So they did the Viva Hysteria residency like years ago, and they played Hysteria in its entirety. And people were flocking there to see this album performed. And now it's like, you look at Adele, who put out her record, the last record she did. She refused to let them put out single. It had to go in order. You couldn't even listen on Apple or Spotify in a jumbled position. She's like, no, I made this record to be played in the order that it's placed in. Like, this is my art, and I want you to consume it the way I want you to. So it's cool to hear you say that.
I mean, I respect that was her vision, and and she wanted to do that, but at the same time, you can't really control what people want to do, and it's kind of like it's almost for us it was the opposite. It was like that, what we didn't have to make people do that. That's just what they did,
right? Because that's the fans. That's the type of fans we got.
Yeah, and it was the timing, it was just that was how people did things back then.
Yeah.
So, for us though, I think it's just like being able to offer this experience to the people that want it. Like, we're happy to do that and honored to do it.
Yeah. So how are you going to work that set list? Is it like one song and then hit, and then like another one from Morning View and then hit, or is it going to be a chunk of the record and then the hits at the end as the encore?
No, the way that we did it at the Hollywood Bowl, and it worked really well, was we came out and we just played Morning View from start to finish, and then after it was done, then we played a bunch of other songs that we had a very strong suspicion that people wanted to hear, and it was just like really magical. It was really magical for us. It was magical for me because I grew up in LA going to see concerts at the Hollywood Bowl. And, like my parents were there. So many of my friends were there. A lot of people I grew up with were there. So it was pretty surreal to be standing on that stage with all of those people in attendance. And then also it was special for me because my wife and my two 7-year-old, well, at the time, 6-year-old twin girls, they came up and played a song with us, joined by none other than Lizzo. She came on stage and played with us too. It was like, it was a lot. It was really fun.
I mean, Lizzo, come on, it's pretty amazing, right?
Well, I mean, like Lizzo.
Did you know who she was? Like, were you familiar with it, or?
Oh, of course. I mean, right. Lizzo's incredible. She's an incredible talent. As talented as an artist as they come. And she's also like a classically trained flute player. Mm-hmm. So we played a song called Aqueous Transmission that has a lot of flute in it. She played the flute. She came very prepared, had her parts all written out and everything. And then she sang also. And it was kind of at the height of her controversy. So it was kind of like, it really freaked a lot of people out that Lizzo came on stage. But I think what a lot of our fans, what Incubus fans don't know necessarily, is that Lizzo is like the biggest Incubus fan on earth. Like, she knows every song that we've ever made. Yeah, it's kind of hilarious. I'd been on a text with her for the last like couple of years, and we've been like talking about doing something together, but just hadn't done it. And then that Hollywood Bowl show came around, and it was just like, all right, here we go.
Yeah,
and it was really fun.
So have you written anything original with her yet, or?
We haven't done anything like that yet, but
I mean, like, what would that song sound like? I mean, like, it's Bad Bitch O'Clock. Like, are we gonna go that kind of vibe, or?
Why not?
Right.
Yeah, whatever it's going to be is going to be. That's how art goes, Yeah. Whatever she's feeling, whatever we're feeling, it will happen at some point. I don't know exactly when, but she showed up and did her thing, and it was pretty fun.
That'd be pretty hilarious. Z100. All right, here's the latest from Lizzo and Incubus. That'd be amazing.
I'm not mad at that.
Right. Talk a little about Morning View. I mean, like with the re-recorded version compared to that, I mean, this was your first record. This is the one that everybody loves and talks about. I mean, like it took you 4 records to get this one as like, you know, your Bohemian Rhapsody in a way. Talk a little about the recording process then compared to now. I mean, like, were you guys into the Pro Tools and like the DAW stuff at that point, or was this analog? And now here we are.
Back in 2001, when we wrote and recorded Morning View. Morning View was the very first album that we ever recorded where we didn't ever touch a tape machine.
Wow.
It was recorded 100% on Pro Tools, and you know we had recorded Make Yourself on tape, and then we would dump all of the tapes into Pro Tools, and then kind of edit stuff in Pro Tools, and then spit it back out on a tape.
Which is so weird, right? Like just to
it took forever. It was a huge pain in the ass. I grew up working in recording studios, so I knew how to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a confidence thing. I think back then, all of us people who were making recordings and engineering them and producing them, I think there was this idea that like, hey, like it sounds better on tape, but so let's take, what we recorded tape, dump that into Pro Tools, edit it and spit it back out.
Which is what a lot of people are doing now.
Yeah,
it's a bit redundant, right?
Who fucking cares? Like seriously, who gives a shit anyway, one way or the other? If you want to use tape, great. If you want to fucking spend half your day and night and everything like fucking around with a tape machine, then fine, do it.
Yeah.
I remember back then there were people who would say like, oh, I can tell the difference. It's like, I couldn't tell the fucking difference, and I still don't care. To me, the thing that matters is what's being recorded, however the hell it's recorded. Like, I don't care. So we when it came time for Morning View, we brought all of our equipment into a house where we were recording, and we didn't have a tape machine set up because a tape machine's the size of a refrigerator. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, all right, do we really need this thing? So we started recording just on Pro Tools, and we all sat around and me and Scott Litt, who was there producing, him and I would sit down and listen, and we would just be like, we don't need a tape machine. That's a waste of everybody's time. So we recorded Morning View entirely on Pro Tools, and haven't looked back since then. I've worked with plenty of tape machines, and there are some things that are cool about them, but they're a fucking pain in the ass. So whatever.
No, you know what? That seems to be the consensus from everybody. It's like once I went to Pro Tools, never looked back. But there is that niche part of the community that it's like, well, it's the warmthness. You don't get that.
Yeah, good for them. Good for them.
And same thing with the vinyl people. I'm like, no, CD for me sounds great. Apple lossless.
That's fine. And then, good friends of mine, like, Skrillex and Zed and, Avicii, who is, now passed, unfortunately. Like those guys would never, their music would never leave their laptop. Mm-hmm. Like, everything is made and produced in that laptop. And by the way, nobody makes like bigger sounding recordings than Skrillex. Like Seriously? His music is like, I don't like, he's on some other shit. He's like, just doing what he does, and his records just sound fucking amazing. Like, just like, so, the art form evolves, continues to evolve. And the more sort of bitter you are and the more stuck you are in the past, like just the further away from the present you become. That's all it is.
What do you think about the loudness war that's kind of going on right now? And everybody's records just sort of being brick walled, all the dynamics taken away. I mean, like, is that just the result of modern recording, or?
I just don't care. Like, who fucking cares? Like, if the music is great, like,
I agree.
Like, whatever, but you're talking to somebody who also, like, I don't care about gear. I don't give a fuck about gear. Don't give a shit about guitars. Don't give a shit about amplifiers. Don't give a shit about tubes. Don't give a shit. I don't care. Like, if the music is cool, like, I don't care about how it was made.
But don't you care about how that process of getting that sound? I mean, like, if you talk to Eddie Van Halen, you want to know what kind of amp you use.
I don't really care what he did. Yeah. It just sounds insane. Like the guy, like it wouldn't be less good if he did it in a different way. To me, like it was what he was playing. You know what I mean? It was what and how he was playing his instrument, not like whatever method it was used to document it. All it is like a method of documentation. And some of those recordings actually, it's funny, like Ben, who, you know, our longtime bass player, like there was one time where he was making jokes about how bad certain Van Halen recordings sounded.
Yeah.
And I always was kind of like in my mind, like, I was like, what are you talking about? Those recordings sound amazing. He was like, no, they don't. They sound like shit. And then I went back and like was like listening to him, and I was like, actually, they sound kind of shitty. Like some of them sound really shitty, but it doesn't fucking matter.
No.
It really doesn't matter. Like it wasn't like the quality, it was like the quality of what was being played. And also, like, you know, whatever you know, there may be lacking in the, you know, sound quality of some aspect, or the kick drum or the snare drum or the whatever it is, it also just lends to like the charm, and also I think reinforces just the strength of how amazing the music was. So like, you know, like, I don't know, like I'm, you know, a lot of people hate me for saying it, but like,
no,
I don't give a fuck about recording methods. I really don't. I worked in recording studios my whole life. I cut tape with a razor blade. I sat there and ran shit through every analog piece of gear you could ever imagine. And then when plugins came along, I was like, oh, I know I can make this sound great. And like, if it's easier, then that's just less shit I have to worry about and spend money on. So, you know, whatever. Who cares?
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny, I know exactly which record he was talking about too. It had to be Oh You Wait One too.
I mean, it's just hilarious. I was so convinced in my mind that those records all sounded amazing, but it's just that the playing was that good. It was just the playing was that good, you know, like Eddie Van Halen and you know, like, and his cohort were just like, they were just crushing it, like just destroying everything, and in a good way.
Yeah.
And so like it didn't matter what they could have recorded everything on a fucking Tascam 4-track cassette recorder, which I spent years doing, by the way. I love those things so much. I love Tascam 4-track cassette recorders. That was like my jam for years.
How many demos of tapes do you have laying around from that thing?
Actually, we have an album called Science that came out in 1997, and there's a song called Magic Medicine that it's like an instrumental kind of drum and like live drum and bass kind of jam.
Yeah.
And I recorded that on my Tascam 4-track recorder.
Come on.
And you know, that was the trick. You'd record 4 tracks on it, and then you'd bounce all 4 tracks down to 2, and then you'd record 2 more on top of it before the hiss started getting real bad. And that was what I did. And I remember like we talked about like kind of re-recording that track in the studio, but it just wasn't nearly as cool to do it that way. And then I remember when we mastered it, I brought my actual 4-track cassette recorder in and plugged that thing straight into the mastering like computer. It was like, you know, and we went straight from cassette into the digital, like, you know, mastering process. And that was super fun. And I thought that was really cool. And I get like extra points for using a fucking Tascam? Who fucking cares?
Yeah.
But people like the song.
But that's the thing. I mean, you captured a moment in time that was super organic and in the moment. Had you recorded that in Pro Tools, maybe it wouldn't have had the same performance, the same vibe.
Yeah. It wouldn't have. It was, well, the process with that Tascam was you could speed up and slow things down with that little like toggle switch. And I it was like a speed knob, and I would slow the tape machine. I would slow the tape down really slow, and I would play these beats in really slowly, and then I would speed them up all fast, and they would sound really precise as like these drum and bass kind of drum tracks. And you know, it was just really fun. I enjoyed all that. I enjoyed it a lot. So, you know, I'm no stranger to like tinkering with different like recording methods, but at the end of it, like, you know, if people didn't like the music, then like,
well, the fuck's the point? If it's shit music, it's shit music regardless of how it's recorded.
Exactly.
Talk about that, and we'll get off this really quick. But I mean, like, you know, looking at the difference between having Pro Tools at your disposal, I mean, like, do you find artists, or have you gotten lazier as a musician because you're able to fuck up as many times as you want, or?
I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same process. I think it matters one way or another. It's like asking a mathematician if they're lazy because they have a calculator. It just means you have to be more creative. You know, like Pro Tools recording equipment is just a tool that we use to capture some idea.
Yeah.
And, that equipment that we use does affect the process for sure. It does affect the creative process. So I don't know. I think it's all over the map. It helps you in some ways, and, maybe it makes you lazy. I mean, there's definitely an aspect of like, well, now, anyone can sing in perfect pitch. You've got auto tune, but that's not new either. Everybody's been doing that for a long time. So,
Yeah.
I think it's just technology just continues to push people to do different things, pushes art forms in new directions, and I think that's what keeps it interesting.
Mm-hmm. No, completely. Talking about gear, and I know you're clearly such a gear guy. Live wise, what are you using? Have you gone digital? You still bringing out big amps, or?
I just play the same shit I've been playing for like over 20 years. I have a pedal board that's so big that I look at it sometimes and wonder why the fuck it's there. And then, I just, play through these Mesa combo amps that I've been using for a long time. All that shit works really well. And it works really well with that sort of big catalog of songs that we play at our shows. I mean, most of that actual gear is what I wrote and recorded those songs with. Right. So it just makes it easy to be able to reproduce that live.
Yeah, and it's almost bulletproof at that point.
Oh, it definitely breaks, but
do you just got like eight different combos in the truck just in case?
No, the stuff works pretty well. If it didn't, I wouldn't be able to. I'd have to switch it out with other stuff.
Do you think about that, though? I mean, like being in the studio and you get a cool sound, you're like, oh shit, well, how am I going to pull that off live? Like, do you have to bring out that piece? Like, how does that work for you?
I don't really think about it in those terms. Even if there's something that I have done in the studio that is a specific thing, if I can't approximate it with something I've already got, then it'll be the rare occasion that I have to put something new on my pedal board or replace some piece of gear or whatever. But I'm open to all that. I don't really care. If I have to do that, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I love the fact you're not pretentious about gear. It's like so many people they gotta have their Strat into their half stack or whatever the fuck it is, and it's like
that's
I need
fine.
my flanger.
I mean, it's fine. It's like there are some things that I do where if I don't have, an effects pedal that does the thing that I want it to do, that, that can be frustrating, but I've tried to avoid that over the years.
Talk a little bit about the writing process. I mean, like from your own records, I mean, even to writing with, Pharrell and Skrillex and, even Avicii, I mean, like, what's the process like that, like for you? Is there a different part of your brain that goes, okay, Incubus song, okay, Lizzo song? Do you separate the two?
I don't actually. Like, I've always just been open to whatever, music sort of comes to me at whatever time it happens, and whoever I'm with doing that, whoever I'm with engaging in that process is gonna, sort of influence it in a different way. Like, and everybody's really different. So, and they want different things. They want to hear different things. They like different things. So, I don't know. Like, I don't really differentiate, in situations where I'm working with different people. There are a lot of times where I'm in the studio working with, someone else, but I'm not even playing guitar. Like, I'm playing piano or I'm programming beats or something, it's just, it really varies widely. Doing stuff with Skrillex is always really fun because like it frees me up to kind of like, play different instruments. Like a lot of times I'm not playing guitar, like when we're working, but he's also a really good guitar player, right? And, played in a lot of rock bands. And so it's like, in that sense, we're very similar. He's just, savant like when it comes to programming, and his real, like, I mean, he's really good at doing everything, but the thing that he's like kind of levels above everybody else at is editing and creating drums. Like that's his thing. Like he's just
kind of did change the way drums sounded in mainstream sort of like CHR, like pop music, or even in that genre. I mean, you never heard drums like his until he came around.
Yeah, he really set the bar for all that stuff. He gets ripped off constantly, and it's funny because like I think he does get a lot of credit for his impact on popular music, but like you hear it constantly. It's just like things that he did with like vocal samples and certain drum patterns and things like that. Like he's just he's just a gangster when it comes to that stuff. But
Yeah.
love the guy. He's like the sweetest human on earth.
Talk a little bit about, I'm sure you told the story 1,000 times about Wake Me Up. I mean, like, I was on the radio in Muscat, Oman when we got the news about Tim.
Oh, wow.
And I was voice tracked on this station over there called High FM, and our program director called me. It was, I don't like the time difference. It was like 2:00 in the morning over here, and he's like, Jeremy, you need to get on the air. Avicii's died down the road from the fucking radio station. I'm like, what? Hopped on the air, broke the news, and I'll never forget that. I mean, his music was just phenomenal, but I thought he was just like a cool dude, like seeing interviews with him and stuff. Like, what was your relationship like with him?
We were very close. We had a very one-on-one friendship, but that's how most of my friendships tend to be. Like, like I wasn't like super tight with like other people in his crew, or like I was around them a bit, but like
you didn't have to go through management to hang out.
But him and I just spoke a lot, like, personally. And, he was a very complicated guy. I think he had a really strong sort of imposter syndrome. Like, I think that he felt like he, like wasn't really a musician, like that people in my world would look at him as like, like this guy just making like cheesy pop music and not, which I didn't look at that hit. I didn't look at him that way at all. Like he was incredibly talented as a musician. He had an amazing ear, and really, really really focused on the tiniest details. Like just, he was meticulous with how he would do things. And
like a Mutt Lange level sort of like detail.
Yeah, just like when we would record vocals, like he would like every tiny inflection, the way that every syllable and vowel sounded, like it just had to be perfect. Like like he'd have somebody sing something 20 times and I'd be like, all right, can we go home now? Like we got it. And he'd be like, no, this one little tiny piece. And he was so hyper focused, but he always got the result that he wanted. And I was shocked, at his passing, just like everybody else was. I mean, I knew that he was troubled. I knew that he was struggling. I knew that he was struggling with substances. And, there was this documentary that had come out at one point, sort of like making it look like he, had like, rid his life of like these drugs that he didn't want to take. But I think that was not accurate. And I knew that he had problems, and I tried to help him in ways that ultimately when people are going through substance abuse addiction problems, they really need to make the decision to help themselves on their own, like before anybody can really do anything. So I look back on it and I'm, thinking about like, okay, what signs did I see? When did he come to me for help? Because he did come to me for help at different points. But he was very private also, and hid a lot of what he was going through from people that were the closest to him. And, it's just a really sad story, but he really did have a hard time. He was very, very conflicted internally about aspects of his life. And it's just sad, He's such a sweet guy, really such a sweet guy.
And you look at this as almost like commentary on the industry in a way. I mean, like the fact that he felt like he had, it's almost like imposter syndrome, like you said. I mean, when you got guys like musicians saying, oh, he's just making some shitty, cheesy pop music, but don't actually realize the type, how musically inclined he is, or how much of a musician he is, or how big of a fan he is. I think that's a big problem in the biz, because it's like you constantly, oh, well, he's just a poser. Oh, he's not the real deal. And then that gets into people's head all the time. And it's like, well, no, like, why can't I just like what I like?
Well, one of the things that was being proposed was apparently SNL wanted him to perform "Wake Me Up," live on SNL.
Yeah,
and he wasn't like opposed to the idea of doing it, but he felt like doing that as a DJ was a waste of time and made him look silly. Like, what am I going to do? Press play and pump my fist in the air? Like, he thought that was dumb. And so I got him into a recording studio, and we were actually rehearsing it with him playing piano, because he could totally play the piano. Wow. There's a lot of piano in that song. Aside from the guitar, and there's a lot of piano in that song. So we were kind of like going through the arrangement and going over it over and over again. And, he felt like he had to play some fruity piano solo over this whole thing in order to for it to be credible. And I kept telling him, like, no one cares, dude. Like, just you playing a piano is plenty. Like, just even playing, very, very basic stuff. But in his own mind, like, he somehow had this idea that he had to be like this virtuoso. And that, like, he had to play this crazy solo. And I kept trying to get him off that idea, but he really didn't want to get off that idea. And I think it was indicative of like a larger problem that he was feeling, where he didn't feel adequate. And I tried my hardest to convince him, like, no, like, people in my world are going to respect that if you get up on stage on a piano and you're playing that song, like, you don't need to prove anything else to anybody. It'll sound awesome too. And unfortunately that never happened, and I tried, to try and get him on board with it, but he had too hard of a time with it. And I think that aversion he had was also part of what fed into his, overall sort of perception of himself as a musician. And it's really sad. He was an amazing musician.
Yeah.
One of the best I ever met,
Damn. Oh, man. I love hearing that story. That's actually amazing. I wish we could have got to see that. That's incredible.
Yeah, me too. I wish too.
And it's great because, like, you look at so many guys like, Kygo and Zed. I mean, they get up there and play the keyboard. They got some sample pads going and play.
I mean, Zed is like a legit, like, Anton. He's an amazing piano player. Like, just totally, like, does it effortlessly, and Tim could totally have been doing that. But he really could have. And so yeah, it's really sad, that he's gone, but I feel very fortunate, very lucky that I got to be, in his presence and part of his story, and that we wrote some great music together that really made an impact on people.
Absolutely. Well, look, you guys are going to be hitting the road performing Morning View in its entirety. Tons of hits in the set list as well. People are going to go and experience a real incredible night of music, live music at that. You're not up there miming. You got the Pro Tools where you got playback happening, or?
Nope. No Pro Tools rig up there.
100% live.
We play the music. We play the music. Not that I'm shit talking anybody who's using Pro Tools tracks. Go for it. Have at it. Enjoy.
No, I completely agree. Tickets are on sale now. Make sure you go and check them out. And Morning View, I mean, the re-recorded version, absolutely fantastic. Make sure you go and catch them on the road. It's going to be great. Mike, it was awesome to meet you. And Chad, we'll have to do this again and dive even deeper into the tech gear, because you love tech.
Awesome. Right on, man.
An all-new episode of The Jeremy White Show.
Available wherever you stream.